Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Shields, and I've got everybody's favorite financial advisor back with me, Eric Miller of Econologics. Hey, Eric, it's been a while. Thanks for coming back,
I
man.
know, man. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah,
Glad to see you.
literally. Yeah, glad you survived the health scare. Glad to have you
Yes.
back. It's been, we went through a run. I think it was about this time last year where it felt like I have you had you on every month, but there's been a little hiatus. It's good to have you back so we can talk about money again.
Yes. It's a good subject to talk about right now because I think in the industry, you're still seeing a lot of owners that are fearful, of reimbursements and managing their practice finances and
Getting squeezed on the
getting
inflation
getting
expense side,
squeezed and inflation and hard finding staff and
right?
all those things that are just kind of normal problems that you're going to have running a business.
Right. And that's for those who have listened here the past few episodes, I've been highlighting a couple of owners that I know well who have fought back against some of their concerns, especially in terms of declining reimbursements, and have dropped some of their lower payer contracts with insurance companies so that they can increase their average reimbursement rate and all turning back their profit margin to a positive thing or even greater positive margin, right? And so when I talk about that, you're not in the industry, but do you see that being a mindset issue for many physical therapists or other private practice owners that you deal with?
I think 100%. Profit is a mindset. It really is.
I like that.
And it is one of those things that you just can't expect is going to show up in your bank accounts at the end of the month. You have to demand it. And
Hmm.
when I say demand it, you have to demand that I am going to make a profit. And it may sound kooky, but I think that's the only way now in a world and in a system that's designed to extract wealth from private practice owners. What is your method of fighting back against that?
Hmm.
And the first thing you have to make a decision in is that I am I'm I need this profit. It is a necessity because I can't expand. I can't pay my people well. I can't, you know, uh, make my household, solvent and have money to invest and get out of debt and all those things if I don't have a profit built in to my business. It's just far too many owners that just get a little reasonable about that,
Yeah.
and they just kind of wait to see if there's going to be anything left over at the month. And that's just not how profit works, man.
It's almost like
Yeah.
they feel like if I'm doing good and I'm doing my intentions are good, right? They're not looking specifically at their actions. They're thinking about they're judging themselves by their intentions, thinking that these good intentions should equate to a good life, good profit margin, happy people all around me, without necessarily being intentional, right? And putting actions and habits into place to generate that profit. I love how you said that you have to demand it
Yeah.
because so much of what PT owners that I've worked with do is exactly what you said. We do the right things, we take all the payers, we appease all the doctors, we see all the patients and sacrifice our time and efforts and money, hoping that that translates into a profit for me and my household that I can pay off my bills.
Yeah, I get the struggle because it seems like the right thing to do, just to what you said right there. Take anyone on, take whatever, reimbursement rate they're going to provide me, take whatever patient that's not going to pay me.
Yeah.
It seems like the right thing to do,
Mhm.
but it's not even close. It's not.
What are you going to tell an owner that says these things that, well, you can't tell me to drop this insurance because that means I'm not going to see this portion of the community and
Hmm.
provide services to them. I might piss off some doctors because I don't take that insurance plan anymore.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
I guess I would just say to that person, how long do you think that you're going to be in business to be able to see patients if you continue to go down this road where your margins ever so slowly begin to diminish down to the point where you're going to just be insolvent, or you're just going to be working on a day-to-day basis. And
Mhm.
then at that point, you're going to be so frustrated and overwhelmed and burn out. You're not going to be nice to your staff. You're not going to be nice to your patients. You're not going to be nice to your spouse. And then it's just going to end with you just throwing in the towel and saying, forget this. This isn't worth it anymore.
Mhm.
Now there may be a number of years before that happens,
Yeah.
right? But it's
Right.
going to happen,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
what did all of that altruism do for you? Right.
Exactly, right? And I that's a good word. That's a good word, altruism. Profit, if you look at the derivation of the word profit, it actually means to expand. So expansion cannot occur if you don't have a profit. And it's not just expansion in your business, it's expansion in your household, expansion in your life, all those things.
Right.
So I would say to those owners, look, you are, um, this is going to sound terrible. You're being selfish by doing that. You're actually being selfish by accepting lower reimbursement rates, by accepting, all those things that you had mentioned, because at some point in time, that is going to cause, is it detraction or
Contraction.
contraction when you shrink, right?
Hmm.
And you're not going to see as many patients. You're not going to be able to employ as many people. And what good is that?
Right. And with
You know?
inflation coming up, expenses getting greater, that is what's happening.
Yeah.
These lower payers maybe weren't so much of an issue 5, 10 years ago, but they're still paying $60 a visit now, 2 decades later, and not accounting for inflation, and it's putting on the squeeze. I had Trace Kennemore out of Tennessee come on, and he's super busy. Like if someone's going to cancel today, they're not going to be able to reschedule within the week, right?
Yeah.
And so what he's noticed is by getting rid of some his lower payer, well, that opens up his schedule now. So some of these higher payers can get more care, and he can provide greater care, more frequent care, and which means equates to better care in the short term to get the for the benefit of the patients. These patients are losing out on good care in the facility, in his facility, or he noticed that as much, which finally helped him make the decision to drop some of these insurances so that those patients could get better care within his facility. Furthermore, he said, he admitted, financially, I'm doing okay. Dropping the insurance might not make a huge difference. Well, it's not going to negatively affect me. It's going to positively affect me. And what it will do for me positively then is to be able to maybe give my team bonuses that I
Yeah.
couldn't do before. Maybe it could allow me to expand and bring on a couple other providers at the higher wages that are expected nowadays. Maybe I can hire more support staff to help my teams, right? So he can invest back into the facility to provide a greater experience for his team. And so if he can improve the quality of care that he's providing, plus provide a greater environment for his team, then yeah, it's totally worth it.
I mean, who is the more courageous person? The person that is being altruistic and keeping these contracts that aren't paying them what they're actually worth, or the person that makes a decision that I'm just not going to get what on anymore. I know the value that we bring to the community. I know the value of care that we bring, and I can't do this anymore.
Mhm.
Who's more courageous? I'm going to say that the latter person's more courageous
Mhm.
because they really do put something on the line, you
Right.
know. But in every instance, and I know that, we've talked about this, in every instance where you've made a decision like that, where you really kind of felt like you kept your integrity in, it always seems to work out,
Yeah.
you know, it just always seems to work out for the better.
Yeah. You mentioned that before we pushed recorders.
Yeah.
Did you ever have that one person you just dragged your feet on getting rid of, but you knew they were a poison. You knew you needed to get rid of them 6 months ago. And when you finally do it, things improve. Your numbers literally improve. The production of the business improves. I've noticed that multiple times. This C player, B- player, maybe they even produce fairly well, but I knew they were a drag on the culture, and
Yeah.
they weren't a personality that fit. They weren't value aligned. Once I got rid of them, things were better, even though I had so much fear prior to that.
Almost 100% of the time that works. So why wouldn't you apply that same standard to your vendors, to your insurance companies that you're working with. You
Mm.
know, if someone's, I mean, they're just doing it in a more sleight of hand way because I guess they feel like they can, right? Well, we're only going to pay you this much because we can, and you're going to take it,
Yeah.
you know? And that's a bad relationship right there. Like people wouldn't tolerate that in their interpersonal relationships. Why would you tolerate that with your business relationships?
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So I think they just have to like just look at that, and say, in what world would I tolerate someone doing that to me?
Right. It's really hard when you look at some of the data. Exactly, Trace shared with it in his episode was United Healthcare posted some $20 billion profit last year, and they haven't found it within them to increase the PT reimbursement rate for 20 years. They're still offering the same contracted rate in Arizona that I accepted back in 2002, now in 2023 at 60, $65 a visit. It hasn't changed. Yet they're generating tens of billions in profit each year.
That's
It's
when
crazy.
you could probably rent a 2 bedroom apartment for like, $700 or $800 or something like that. You could get a car for under $20,000,
Yeah,
back in
exactly.
2000,
Back in
not
2002. Yeah,
back in
exactly.
2002. Not
Right.
anymore.
No, it's not happening anymore. And that was one thing that he mentioned that should be upsetting. It should make us emotional as owners, but somehow we like to take the compassionate route and think, well, we're better. It's not about the money. It's not, there are greater things in life. Okay, maybe, uh,
Yep.
but you also might not be cut out for ownership.
I think this is where you have to really delineate what your roles are, because there is a part of you that has to be like in that practitioner caregiver role.
Sure.
And I think when you're talking to your providers, you obviously want them to have, that mindset of care, and that bleeds through in what they're doing with the patients. But then, you also have to have that CFO mindset as well, which
Mhm.
is definitely not, it's more numbers oriented. It's making fast decisions. It's demanding exchange for the services delivered. It
Mhm.
is making sure that the business is profitable and has reserves and can operate. And that's two different mindsets.
That's true.
And I think that's why people hate corporate so much, because they think, oh, they're just cold blooded, and they'll just fire 10 people at a drop of a hat without really thinking about those people. And yes, they will. And there's plenty we can complain about with them, but there are some things that they do that allow them to stay solvent,
Mhm.
and they do make corrections and changes when they have to.
Right.
And that does allow them to, maintain a level of profitability so
And
they can
sustainability.
expand, and
Yeah, absolutely.
sustainability.
Right. As you're seeing owners join you at Econologics, are you, is it a pretty general rule of thumb that they're not tracking KPIs, especially as it pertains to production and profit?
I'd say that, yeah, yes and no. I mean, certainly some of them are not really looking at. You talking about KPIs in the business or KPIs in the household?
Well, the KPIs in the business, I'm talking
Yeah.
specifically like, can they read their financial reports? Do they know how to read a financial statement? Do they know
Well,
their profit margin? Do they know their
yeah.
average? Do they know how many visits per week they need to see in order to make a profit? Do they
I,
have some of those?
I think there's some of that, but it really isn't that dialed in as much as it needs to be.
Yeah.
And I think it all depends on how mature they are as an owner too. I think the younger
Okay.
owners are probably a little bit more like, I just need to see new patients. And then, as you get to that point, I'm sure you had that point too. You're like, I need to understand what these statements mean.
Right.
Like, how does that affect me? And, how do I manage the resources better of the
Right.
practice so that I can
Mhm.
I can expand. So,
Mhm.
but there is an overall like not wanting to like look so much at the numbers that much.
Mm.
But I think that's where, having either a consultant or advisor that kind of puts it in your face. Like,
Mhm.
look, here's the reality here. I mean, you have a 3,000 square foot facility. There's so many patient visits that you need to be seeing per day,
Right.
and here's where you're losing income.
Mhm.
You have this facility that could see three, I don't know how many patients a week, and you're seeing 200.
Right.
Okay, well there's one gap right there that you can look to fix. How do you
Right.
fix that?
Yeah.
And then to your point, like looking at your insurance contracts, like what does my reimbursement rate need to be for me to be profitable?
Hmm.
And that means I just can't take this anymore. I just can't do it.
Right.
You know?
I think that, and because they're standoffish to the numbers, I think they use that ignorance or naivete to not address it and just say,
Yeah,
well, maybe they come up with excuses, or they just turn a blind eye, or they get distracted by other things, or just say, I'd rather go treat patients.
yeah,
And so that's, and I totally get it. The owners that are successful are the ones that, when they have their half day a week or 2 half days a week where they should start to work on admin stuff, they're not just paying bills, but they are looking at the financial statements. They're setting up meetings. This is what I did, is I told my CPA, I said, you need to show me my cash flow, what that looks like. What is a financial statement? How do I read
yeah.
this? And so we set it up every month that we would walk over all the numbers. And wasn't very long before I figured out, okay, I need to make about this much money to maintain this profit margin, and that equates to this many visits per week.
And I think that right there is where you're going to find the fatal flaw for most owners is that they wildly underestimate how much they actually need to be bringing in for
Mhm.
them to remain profitable. And of course, when I say profitable, I mean that it's not
Mhm.
just enough to pay your bills, right? It
Right, right.
is compensating yourself, having, money in business reserves, be able to
Right,
pay your taxes, all these other things that we incorporate in so that that demand is correct,
right.
because I really still think that that's the reason why most people are insolvent. They're just operating on the wrong number of where they
Mhm.
need to be.
Well,
And that would make it easy to make some of these decisions then. If
right.
you really knew what that would be, you'd be like, oh, there's no way I can see that I can take this insurance contract. There's just no way. I need to see somebody else at this amount if I'm going
Mhm.
to hit my number,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. I was talking to a friend who is losing money monthly on his PT practice. And I asked him at lunch, I said, how many visits a week do you need to at least make a profit compared to where you are now? And he wasn't sure. And
Yeah.
that surprised me. Like, you're in such financial straits, you still haven't got down to the data of, I need this many providers to see this many patients per week in order to generate a profit and correct the current course that we're in. And he didn't have that, right? I'm sure if I got into some of the weeds, like, what is your average expense per visit? What is your average reimbursement per visit? You might be able to come up with some roundabouts, right? But not knowing the data and really being in the weeds in your financials is going to be really limiting, because when issues come up like inflation and increase in salaries and wages and the cost to do things, it's going to bite you, because
Yeah.
you're going to find out too late. You're going to find out 6 to 12 months down the road when you could have figured that out within a month or two.
Yeah. I mean, and it allows you to take some course corrections of,
Yeah.
maybe we need to see people, every 30 minutes as opposed to every hour. I mean, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
force you to have to make changes to your practice. That doesn't mean that it has to sacrifice quality of care, though. You just
Mm-mm.
have to get a little bit more innovative
Yeah.
in how you do things,
Right. Right.
and move a little bit faster. Speed kills with money,
Mm-hmm.
right? Money and speed go hand in hand. And you have to really make sure like you are seeing people. And if you do things fast, I think anywhere in the organization you can say, where can we take some time out of this,
Mm-hmm.
is going to improve the productivity of the practice overall.
Right.
You know, we're going to talk about also kind of like the mindset of people that are in charge of the money lines as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
important.
exactly. Oh, for sure. I found with my most successful billers in particular, they have a certain personality type,
Yeah.
and it's really dogged. And that might sound bad because they're mostly female, but but I don't know what other adjective to use. They take it personally that the insurance companies aren't paying,
Yeah.
even it's like $18. Like, no, you're not going to keep that 18. That's my. They take it personally. That's my money. right? Or they get excited about how they got this check from the insurance company that they told me was denied 8 months ago, but I worked so hard and I finally got $100 and something, where you're like, I'd rather you spend more time on other things instead of going after $100. But you want that personality type that's not
Yeah.
afraid to fight for the money, not just with insurance companies. And maybe the fight isn't so much there with the patients, maybe some patients it is, but not being afraid to say, we provide a valuable service, whether it's you or the insurance company, we deserve to get paid for it.
Yeah. I 100%. I mean, we kind of call it the bulldog personality that you need on the money lines. You do need someone that will grip and not let go,
Mm.
right? Like it's that important to them to be able to collect money because that that is the lifeblood of the organization, and that's where it gets a little dicey because if you don't have someone, I mean, $20 here, $18 here, $50 here, that you talk thousands of patients,
Mm-hmm.
that adds up over time. So I definitely think the character and the mindset of the person, the biller, or front desk person who's ever in
Especially.
charge of that has has to be kind of a killer, when it comes to, being able to ask for money, you know.
Yeah, that's the one thing I found as I was interviewing for front desk personnel was their aptitude for asking for money without being ashamed, embarrassed, or scared.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm looking for the fear that they might have when they ask for money, and that's one of the questions I'll ask in the interviews. Like, how do you ask for money, especially if someone has a late balance, or maybe it's $250. Maybe it's the new year, so it's the new year in 2023. A lot of deductibles come due. My practice did a lot better when we collected the deductibles at the time of service and did not wait until the EOB came 8 weeks later, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's money lost by letting them walk out the door without paying. So collecting on those deductibles, again, the owners that don't put those policies and those type of people in place to collect the money, I like the word that you use. They think they're being nice when they're just lacking courage,
Yeah. It
right?
takes courage to ask people for money, man.
Right.
I mean, that's why the best salesmen they
They
always have
don't
money.
care.
They don't
Yeah,
care.
they don't
Like
care.
the
This is a transaction. I'm giving you value, and in exchange, you give me money.
You literally have to think like a teenager and or a child. And you've had kids.
Mm.
I'll tell you about having kids.
I have a few kids.
At what point were those kids ever afraid to ask for something? They'll ask for anything, right? They're
Right.
like, I want this, I want that, and I really, the people that are in charge, that are responsible for collecting money, have to have that same mentality of
Mhm.
a 6-year-old that says, "This is mine," and you're not taking it away from me, and I want it right now, which they can be like.
Yeah.
So, God, kids can teach us so many valuable lessons about money and life. It's just so crazy, man.
Yeah. I like how
It's
you brought up the kids thing because my teenager asked us for he didn't have enough money to take a girl on a date and he expected us to give him the money when he hasn't had a job for some time. Like
Yeah,
uh like he was appalled that we wouldn't give him the cash.
exactly right. They're
Right?
they have this look on their face like, I can't believe you said no to me, you
Yeah.
know? And but you have to have that same mindset when you're
Right.
dealing with the public, and if you can, things are going to work out well.
That's
But
when financially my business did its best, when I had a biller that had that bulldog personality, and I
yeah,
had a front desk person that wasn't asking necessarily if they wanted to pay their copay or deductible, but
how are you going to pay?
how are you
Yeah,
going to pay the picking a your deductible is not met, so we're going to collect $200 per visit until it's met. How would you like to pay today?
yeah.
And just boom, straightforward. And they could have come up with all kinds of creations and excuses, but no, that person at the front desk was going to get that money. When I had those type of people in place, that's when things did better for me and my profits were greater.
Look, this is still a great business. It still can be a profitable business, but we just talked about like 6 or 7 things that you can do internally
Mhm.
right there to make sure that you are staying profitable. And how many people actually want to do it? I say this all the time. It's like 99% of your financial condition is not due to any outside external factors, which everyone kind of says they are. It's an inside job. And if you really look, it is probably 6, 7 different things that you're not doing internally that
Mhm.
are keeping you from being able to have the kind of profit margins that you deserve.
Right.
So it really is like, I think it's that important to know, like, you can control the outcome. You
Yeah.
really can, but you got to be
Yeah.
willing to confront it.
And even with today's, like I mentioned inflation a few times, but with expenses going up and whatnot, I had a conversation with my son who he's on his own for the first time in the world and learning what it takes to get by. And he's living on a paper thin margin when it comes to money. Like any unexpected expense is going to have a tough time covering rent the next month, that kind of stuff. But when I was talking to him, I said, I'd rather see you focus on what you can do to increase your revenue versus decrease your expenses. Yes, you shouldn't be eating out as much and you should be going to the grocery store. But yeah, simply go ahead and do that, but don't leave it there. And I would love to tell owners the same thing. Yes, you should be aware of your expenses. You should be aware of your KPIs, especially regarding financials and production and your average reimbursement, that kind of stuff. But what are you going to do you have a plan in place or at least have a goal this year to increase your average reimbursement per visit or increase your profit margin? Is that singular thing part of your plan this next year? Because that's ultimately what it's all for.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I don't know any therapist that's going to sacrifice patient care to meet those things. So why isn't one of your priorities this year? How do I at least maintain or significantly improve the patient care and increase our reimbursement or profit margin this next year? You can do all you want regarding decreasing expenses, but your focus needs to be on increasing and expanding that revenue base.
Yeah, I've definitely never seen anyone do that like successfully where it makes a meaningful difference. You have to get your
By just
marketing
cutting
dialed up.
expenses.
Yeah, yeah. It's
No.
just it's never part of like a successful formula for expansion.
Mhm.
I think good
We're going to
promotion.
cut our way to the top.
They're going to cut your way to the top. Yeah, I mean, even governments can't do that. They
Right.
they they think they can, but it really can't. You have to get people more productive
Mhm.
because that's always the there's two sides to inflation, right? It's the demand for money and the reason, and then the production. And inflation, I guess you could best be defined as that there's too few products,
Mhm.
dollars chasing too few products, which is obviously going to raise the prices of those products.
Mhm.
So how do you fight inflation? You get more productive because when you create more production, whatever the dollars are that are in circulation now, that would obviously lower the prices of things. And I think
Right.
that's what can you do as an owner is get my people more productive. That's going to be my best hedge against inflation is to get people more able, do their jobs faster. And that will allow us to, handle any kind of inflation issues that we're going to have to deal
Mhm.
with.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that
Yeah.
definitely works.
Last thing I'd just like to say, and I don't know if it requires discussion, but I would say, and I'm guilty of this myself, is that 90% of the owners out there don't have their contracts available to them at any given time to know exactly what they're contracted to.
Why is that? Are they like hidden in some like secret vault of
It,
like,
I think you sign on the dotted line and then you forget it. Like I don't think you're getting nowadays they might have emailed you the signed executed contract and so it's stuck in your email inbox somewhere or if you're old enough to have paper contracts they are collecting dust somewhere deep in the
are they like
files.
are they like 100-page contracts
Oh
too? I mean,
yeah, they can
are they
be
really?
for sure. Yeah, but what was interesting in my conversation with Trace is he signed that contract with United Healthcare probably 25 years ago, right? And they found it. He didn't have it. They found it as he talked to the contract manager, and they also found that since he signed it, United Healthcare had acquired a lot of these other smaller insurance companies. And so all those smaller insurance companies got added onto that contract. And so he found that that one contract also had like 6 additional contracts tied to it because of all of United Healthcare's work in the past couple decades. And so I was surprised that they actually found the contract, because I've heard plenty of times where you might talk to the provider relations at any insurance company, and they're going to slow walk that request to get you your contract. It's just not something that they, I don't know why.
How many contracts should you have? I mean, do you think there's like a set number, or is just the quality of the contracts
I
more
think,
important?
yeah, it could vary so much based on the quality of the contracts, right? Because when you open up a clinic, typically, and this is how it was when I opened up, and it has been, I don't know if it's like this recently, but you just take all comers, man. Any of the Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, Aetna, United Healthcare,
Yeah.
you're gonna take them all. Medicaid, Medicare, of course, just to be available to get things off the ground, right? You don't want to
Yeah.
tell any doctor that you're limiting. Again, it goes back to our fear mindset. But yeah, so that can be tough to find them. But it's
And,
necessary.
yeah. And then when you went to sell, because I think it's another important question as well. Like when you go to sell, how important are the quality of those contracts to the buyer?
Well,
Uh,
yeah, that was
Depending
that
on who
kind
you're buying to, yeah, or selling to,
that came around to bite us, man. We didn't have the contracts on hand, so it was a scramble.
really?
Oh yeah,
Wow.
we didn't have them on hand, so we had to scramble and find them and talk to the insurance companies and get them. And yeah, it was a headache, that's for sure.
Your
But they want to
business
see
is
them.
Yeah, your business is based upon this particular contract. So I think that would definitely be number one on my checklist, is to make sure I understand that contract, what it looks like, and have it somewhere.
Have it readily available
Have it
to,
readily available.
right.
That's just
Yeah.
a responsibility point of being an owner, though, of making
Yeah.
sure you're keeping all your compliance lines in. So that's
Mhm.
something that everyone can do, right? I mean, you can call up and find the contract and keep a file, or keep it on the cloud somewhere where you have a
Right.
copy of all these things.
Yeah. Or if you use a credentialing service, maybe they have that for you at least
Yeah.
and have some access to it. So you should be able to find it. But that's just one last thing I want to bring up regarding contracts. But anything else you want to share before we sign off today?
I think we deal with the frustrations of PT owners, and I do get it. I really do. You can feel it. You can feel like they're torn between, like, this idea that I have to provide this care for my community. Who else is going to do it? But do I have to sacrifice myself, my financial future, my business value, and all those things to do it? And that's not a winnable game to do
Mhm.
that. So you have to have what makes it winnable, right? And I think making sure that you are getting paid for the value that you're bringing, and you don't accept anything less, is the only thing that's going to make it a winnable game for you.
Right. Yeah, I totally
So,
agree. Because, like I said earlier, if the profits aren't there, you ain't going anywhere.
damn, there he goes. He's
Yeah.
leaving. He's
Trademark.
leaving. He's leaving it.
Nathan Shields said it here first.
I love
You
it.
can't have
And that is
it.
the title of the
Of the
podcast right
podcast.
there.
Right.
The
Cool, man.
profits aren't there. You're not going anywhere.
If people wanted to reach out and talk to you, how do they get a hold of you
Yes,
nowadays?
my friend, they can go to Econologics Financial Advisors, or I did write a book, How to Become a Financial Beast. I think it's still
Dude,
available
I read it. It was good.
on a Kindle, Amazon. You can go find it there,
Hmm.
and there's a number of ways to do that. But yeah, econologicsfinancialadvisors.com.
All right, man. Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing today, man. I appreciate it.
Good to see you again.